development of Šilutė in the early 20th century features a number of architectural fashions of the time. Šilutė post office, built in 1909, is one of them. The Jugendstil building also features a notable influence of the homeland style, which romanticized traditional German shapes. The side segments, which remind of residential houses, are finished with angled cornices that replicate the shapes of the roof. The only thing to disrupt the symmetry is the high cylinder turret, featuring the main entrance with an angled stairway, a monumental portal, and a little front gable with elements of Jugendstil decor. The doors and floor tiles inside are authentic. The court building of Šilutė was built in the mid-19th century in what was a suburb at the time. It features eclectic architecture predominated by brickwork, although there are several hints of Neo-Romanesque and Neo-Gothic styles. The third floor and the staff wing, built in 1909, feature rationalized Gothic style. You can recognize it by the narrow vertical windows, wide niches, and complex gables common to public buildings of the time. The gate, which acts as an extension of the building, takes to the yard, where you will find an example of a bit more practical architecture of the time. Šilutė District Prison, which had retained its original function until 1954. Later, as the building was turned into a dormitory, it lost its characteristic division of the facade. The small vertical windows were reshaped into large windows, and the buildings acquired the fourth floor. The interior still has its centered corridors with cells on both sides, while a part of the fence, which used to surround the inner yard, has survived as well. As Šilutė grew, it needed a new Lutheran church, but its completion was delayed until 1926. Differently from the majority of Neo-Gothic churches, this one has a plastered facade. The stone basement of the belfry and embossed compositions on the side entrances are unique. While the playful arched little windows with pilasters match the top section of the belfry. The surviving murals, ceiling decor, chandeliers, and stylized column capitals of the interior illustrate the eclectic tendencies of the early 20th century. The interior was designed by local masters. The pulpit was made at the workshops of Munkas, while Professor Richard Pfeiffer from Königsberg painted the walls, the vaults, and created the stained glass windows. The landscape of Švėkšna is characterized by the turrets of the church that is the fourth highest church in Lithuania. The house of prayer, funded by Pliateriai family in 1900, was designed by Karl Eduard Strandman, the well-known historical church architect. The Church of Marburg is regarded as its prototype. The architect's signature is perpetuated in the pointed niche with the rosette window above the entrance. The spires are exceptional as well. The interior of the church is predominated by unplastered pillars and ribbed vaults, characteristic to Neo-Gothic style, while the most impressive piece of the church is the great altar, produced by the masters of Tyrol, and confessional. The 4 neo-Gothic gates and the surrounding fence were built circa 1885. A noteworthy element of the entire complex is the viaduct connecting the churchyard with the manor park. Švėkšna Manor estate welcomes visitors with its monumental neo-Renaissance gate. The representatives of Pliateriai family who lived here built a small yet expressive villa Genovaitė in 1880. The neoclassical palace, featuring late classicist, empire-style tendencies, are particularly decorative. The first-floor roof terraces are characteristic of that time. The facades are rich with sculptural elements, while the pilaster capitals and the ornate cornices are decorated with floral motifs. The interior is also rich with details of the empire, such as marble imitation columns, molded decor, ceiling frieze, and a composition of the ancient Roman goddess Flora on the ceiling. The building of Chalute Gymnasium was built in 1928 in the part of the park which belonged to Pliateriai Manor and was donated for school purposes. This is an example of historicist architecture of the interwar period, featuring the more modest elements of modernized classicism. Vilkėnas village, located north of Švėkšna, has an impressive ensemble too. The Neo-Renaissance palace was built in the estate that used to belong to Pliateriai family in 1880-1897. Although the building does feature a rectangular plan, characteristic of Classicism, the Belvedere Tower, disrupting the building's symmetry, side avant-cours, and the high observation tower are examples of historicism. The most ornate elements of the building are the gables, decorated with volutes, floral motifs, and the family's heraldry.